is Mr. Bob Chapman. Welcome to the show, Mr. Chapman.
Well, thank you again. It's been good to be here again. I'm greeted with a giant echo. Did it go away?
I don't know.
It did. I had to ask. Anyway, lots of exciting things going on. And we have, well, I guess we'll call this Obama Unmasked. And what that is a certificate of live birth, which you're all familiar with. It's so full of holes, it's tragic. I mean, it had to be put together by the Mad Hatter. In fact, it's so bad, the mistakes on there are so bad, that you have to believe that they did it deliberately. I haven't quite figured out what they're after yet, but people outside the United States glommed on and understood what it was right away as far as being a forgery. And a lot of Americans believe it's the right, proper, bona fide thing. Well, of course it isn't.
Mr. Chapman, I have an intelligence officer who's just primed in. He says, I have an 8-year-old granddaughter, the fourth child of my son, who could do a better job with this in Paint Room on her computer.
Well, I agree, and that's why I say that, they can't be that dumb. They're not that dumb. So they have another ulterior motive, throwing that roadblock up, we'll call it, and that's really essentially what it is, a roadblock. And I can't figure out yet what they're up to, but I will. Then, of course, we had Mr. Bin Laden liquidated. Unfortunately, there's a pile of intelligence that goes back over the years that proves that Mr. Bin Laden met his maker about 10 years ago. And the only thing I can think of is that they're trying to set this whole thing up for a false flag operation. I saw the interviews from people who lived next door to this compound that supposedly held Mr. Bin Laden, and the people next door said nothing like that happened here. And when people from the press and others came into the building, there was no sign of a firefight whatsoever. And, no holes in the wall or nothing blown apart with bullets and so on and so forth. We don't know exactly what they're up to here, but and many of you have seen this, but back in 2007, there was a television interview with a CIA MI6 operator. And from my own intelligence contacts, I know for sure that this person was in the CIA. In fact, I even know who recruited her. I know the man. He used to work with me. And Benazir Bhutto said on television that Mr. Bin Laden had been dead for several years. And conveniently, there was a assassination attempt against her. And then that was a miss. And then they got to her 3 months later. I can't help but think that the agency was so disturbed about what she had done that they whacked her. And the reason I know that that was the case is her mentor was really disturbed and had a lot to say about what had transpired, but didn't let the cat out of the bag. He worked for the agency, I don't know. I'd have to think about it for probably 40, 45 years. And I'd have to back into the years because we lived together. And he was really upset. So Mr. Bin Laden was dead. What they're up to, I don't know. It's, just stinks of false flag operation coming. I think the moves that have been made just recently in the Middle East, in Libya, in Syria, are extraordinarily serious. We've gone over the reasons why they went into Libya. And the man who's running the show for the rebels is a CIA employee. He's lived in Virginia for 20 years prior to being where he's at now, running the rebel forces. And there's one extremely important element here that you have seen nothing about in the press. The Chinese get oil from Libya. Of course, they're not getting any right now. And the oil in Libya is of very, very good quality. And they had 29,000 people working there. And they had to pull them all out. And China's irate. Russia's irate about Syria because they have a naval base there. Now, why would the U.S. and the UK, and the French are involved in this too, along with Israel, why would they start demonstrations which led to violence in Syria, only for no other reason to get the Russians upset? And of course, part of their attack by proxy, we'll call it, on Libya was because the Chinese were there. They're looking for war. The United States and Britain want a war. And I think the elements for World War III are there. I think it's really begun. We just don't know it yet. And I hate to tell you that because I don't want to see a war. And all of you people out there, you don't want to either. And I just think that's where this is headed. They're trying to put their own people in place in each and every government in the Middle East so that when they go after Iran, they won't have any problems, so to speak. And that's what's going on over there with Libya. They want to loot the country is what they want to do. And we've gone over that last week and the week before probably too. But anyway, that's the way I see that international situation in the two events that we've seen just recently. You have to understand that in intelligence and counterintelligence, it's very important that you understand that governments do deceitful things. And sometimes they do terrible things. And they're not going to tell you what they're doing because they feel that their agenda and their mission would be compromised. And that's true. But it doesn't mean what they're doing is right and correct. Starting a third world war because the Western world is in deep financial trouble is no justification. But historically, going back for over 1,000 years, you'll find that governments and dictators and so on and so forth have taken this tact in order to justify the failure of the system. Now, the failure of the system is a system that they created. And they don't want anybody to know. They're trying to bring the system down. And they want to do it under the cover of warfare, blaming the failure on warfare. And this is an historical perspective. And this is what they're up to. They want world government, and everything has to be upside down for everybody to accept it. And this is the track we're on, and it's not a good one. And it's going to end up very badly, very, very badly for everybody in the world. No one's going to escape the economic and financial tumult. And a lot of people are going to be affected by the terrible situation that would develop out of a world war. I mean, we don't even know whether it'll go nuclear. I mean, if the Russians and the Chinese are pushed to the edge, they'll use them. And so won't Israel. Not a good situation. And we could end up with having half the people in the world dead.
And that's what they want.
Yes, it is. It's one of the things that they want. They think there's too many people on Earth, and they need to get rid of them. And there's plenty of evidence of that, incidentally. So I think that's where we're going. This past week, we saw one of the greatest and largest criminal scams in the history of the markets. In commodities, the Treasury Department told the large brokerage firms which are in the commodity business that they wanted them to recommend that people sell commodities and gold and silver. And the CME, which owns the COMEX, which is where the futures are traded, they raised margin requirements for silver 3 out of 4 days. Never heard of. Never happened before. And then with the brokerage firms telling people to get out, they took silver from $50 to $35 in 5 days. I've been doing this for over 50 years. I've never seen anything like that before, or even close to it. The United States government, Treasury Department, and a privately owned Fed were responsible for destroying those markets. And of course, they're working under the aegis of the executive order, the President's Working Group on Financial Markets. And they think they can do anything, and it's legal. Is it right and legal to steal the money of American citizens and other citizens? I don't think so. And that's what went on in those markets. Oh, they'll turn around and go right back up again because the underlying problems didn't go away. But they just had to show you the power that they had to try to destroy those markets and relieve J.P. Morgan Chase and Hong Kong Shanghai Bank Corporation of a loss that they would have taken of some $80 to $90 billion. It's always all about money. And so that's what went on in the markets this week. What do? You buy, because we're going to win. They're wrong. and there's nothing they can do about it.
Well, let's go over here and ask this one question that we got in the chat room a little earlier from Lana in South Texas. She asked, Mr. Chapman, do you feel that Soros is bankrolling Trump for a real estate deal and bringing forth truth about Obama?
I don't know. I've never figured that angle. Can't answer it.
And Betty in California comes in and she asks, Mr. Chapman, the word is out that China is decreasing its holding in U.S. debt. Can you expand on that?
Well, they certainly are. And because of the move into Libya by the United States, they said, look, we're tired of this. We're going to sell off $2 of the $3 trillion worth of dollar assets that we have. Now, if they do that, it's going to be thunder and lightning. We saw Mexico go into the market 2 months ago. They just announced it yesterday. They bought 100 tons of gold almost. Mexico? $4.6 billion. Mexico is sitting with about $95 billion in U.S. treasuries. But still, the U.S. is not going to be happy about it.
No, well, when they're buying gold, regardless of what they're paying for the gold with the paper.
Yeah, but they're not the only ones. I mean, once this market turns in the next few days on gold and silver, Chinese, India, Brazil, Iran, you name it, maybe even Mexico, are going to buy all they can get their hands on.
Mr. Chapman, silver is now at $34.80, down from above 40. And is silver running out of support? And how low do you feel that it's going to fall? And should I sell now and buy as it falls, or what?
I would be a seller. I would be a buyer. And the reason is, by any criteria whatsoever, the market is way oversold. From 50 to 34, I mean, even if you look at the Fibonacci charts, all the charts, technically, it's a buy signal. And then on top of it, all the fundamentals haven't changed one bit. We won't know till tomorrow when the COT commercial report comes out on the net position of the negative of the shorts. We won't know what they're doing, but we'll find out. I don't think they covered much at all. I think this whole thing was a power trip. They wanted to show the people of the world that we are the masters of the universe. And we're going to show them they aren't. Because the minute this thing turns, it's going to go right back up again. One thing about markets is that when you spike up or spike down, and it's not usual, it doesn't happen very often, you usually have a minimum of a 50% retracement, and sometimes 100 or more.
From California, Mr. Chapman, Australia retail sales are declining, sending their Australian dollar lower. Is this a sign of the times of the economies around the world that are tied to the United States? Is there a crash coming, and we're just not? Are we in the middle of the crash? We just don't know it.
We've been in the middle of a period of adjustment for years, and 3 years to be precise. And it's going to get lots worse. And in February 2 years ago, which takes us about 25 or 6 months into what I believe is an inflationary depression. And they try to cover it up by QE1, 2, and maybe even QE3, and all probability QE3. Because if they stop, the whole thing's going to collapse.
We got to take a break, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll be right back with Mr. Bob Chapman and Max. I'll get your question out to Mr. Chapman and let him think about it. Mr. Chapman, over the break, Max wants you to look into the silver drop, and do you feel that it can be compared to the old Rothschild trick when they bought up the stock after Waterloo at cheap prices, and that allowed them to take control of Great Britain's major financial shares? With that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back with Mr. Bob Chapman. This is a Marines Disquisition. We're heard live around the world on Wind Talkers Radio Network and off the Internet with Blog Talk Radio. Welcome back. This is a Marines Disquisition. And as we went off the air there for the commercial break, we had a question go up from Mr. Chapman. And the question was about the Rothschilds tricking the British after Waterloo. Mr. Chapman, do you feel that that is a play behind the scenes now for the power elite in the New World Order, doing as the Rothschilds did to control British financial industries? Questions from Max out of the Blog Talk chat room.
Well, first of all, that event did happen. They sent word back that the British had been defeated, when in fact they knew that they had not. And the stock market collapsed, the bond market. And they bought everything up. The Rothschilds bought everything up for pennies on the dollar. And the outcome was that the Rothschilds became fabulously rich. They were already very, very rich, but this put them in the category of kings, so to speak. And of course, we recently saw that in the intimate marriage of one of the members of the House of Windsor, who probably will become the King of England, with Kate Middleton, who was a Rothschild. But whether that is what's going to happen now, I can't say. I really can't make a comparison. I haven't thought of it in those terms. It's a good thought process, though, because of what's happened before. And I'll have to think about that. So I can't really give you a good answer.
That's a good question for Mr. Chapman to think about. I mean, you can play a round of golf and Judy can miscue and hit you over the head. Maybe you can remember. Question from the chat room again. Mr. Chapman, could you explain what retracement is?
A retracement is, we'll take silver as an example, went up to $50 and it retraced back to $35. And that's a retracement of an earlier gain. But if you look at all of the information available, you'll come to the conclusion that this was an abnormal, man-made event by the United States government. Can they do it again? Sure they can. They keep on doing that, they're not going to have anybody in the market. And I want to tell you something that most people are not privy to. What happened was that last week, someone who I knew as the president of a mining company talked with the chief executive of one of the larger stock exchanges in the United States. And then he talked to the person again today. the SEC, CFTC, and the heads of the exchanges are receiving over 1,000 complaints a day about naked shorting and gold and silver and the shares and the participation in the manipulation of markets by the United States government. Now that's a fact. In fact, the comment by the executive was, we have a pile of complaints 4 feet high. We have to follow up every one of them. He said, I don't know how we're going to do it. So the public is not being befuddled here. The United States government is in serious trouble with the public, not only for this, but for other things as well. And you see them every day. There's a litany of things. And so all is not for naught. We are making progress. We're breathing down their neck. And any of you who have a computer, who are in gold and silver, or the shares, what you should do is write a letter. And the letter should say, I own gold and silver shares, and the market is being manipulated by the United States government using naked shorting, and I want to stop now. You send that to every representative, every senator, the heads of the SEC and the Commodity Futures Trading Corporation, which is called the CFTC, as well as the heads of the exchanges, New York American and NASDAQ. And don't send a lengthy letter. That's all you have to send. Let them know that we know what the government's doing, and why aren't you doing something about what they're doing?
From the chat room, again, we have Mr. Bartek asked the question, is it worth me to sell my gold to buy silver now? Or your suggestion?
No, I don't think so. If you don't have any silver, you could entertain some of it being sold to buy silver. I could go along with that. Because silver has been much more adjusted, corrected, retraced, if you may, than gold has. And that might be a good change. With the stocks, most all of the stocks have both gold and silver. Some are heavier than others in one metal or another. But that's not a bad thing to do, particularly if you don't have silver.
Mr. Chapman, there's several countries in Europe that are continually borrowing money or getting money from the euro on the euro market from the IMF. Most recently, Portugal came up with $78 billion in euros. Is this never-ending collection going to finally blow out and bring these countries down? The emergency lending for Portugal has been lifted. The cost of fighting Europe's debt is now $256 billion, 256 billion euros, as speculation amounts that Greece is about to plunge into the financial abyss.
Well, first of all, the loan that was arranged for Portugal 2 days ago, that loan is subject to congressional approval. And what they fail to tell you in the dispatches through the different news services is that the legislature has already turned down such a measure before. The outgoing president, and he has to leave now because it was a vote of no confidence, there has to be election. And he made this deal with the IMF and the EU. The people didn't make it, and it's subject to approval, and it's not going to be approved. And the same thing is happening in Greece. I just got an email today from one of my contacts in Greece that knows what's going on. This will be in Sadney's issue, incidentally. If you remember, I told you that previously, last week, or the week before, that the bankers, the IMF, the EU, wanted collateralization of the Greek loan. And for that, they wanted the collateralization to be all publicly owned buildings, seaports, airports, the airline, all the islands in the Caribbean, in the Mediterranean, and they have oil offshore, off of Greece. The gas, electric, trains, buses, 236 airfields, they want everything they've got because they know that the Greeks are not going to pay them back. Now, this communique says the following. The conspiracy, and he calls them troika, a Russian word for a sleigh which has 3 horses in front of it, and they would be the IMF, the EU, and the people who are running the great government. Unexpected exposure from Mr. Twaskan, an ex-IMF chief, in an interview that he had, and he said Mr. Papandreou had made the agreements before he was elected and did not reveal these to anyone. Of course, the current negotiators, this troika, deny it. The Greek constitutional experts say that this amounts to a political coup d'etat. The whole thing was a setup from the beginning, and now it's becoming widely known all over Greece. And the administration must follow the Constitution, which requires a 2/3 vote on this collateralization process for loans. You didn't read that anywhere in Europe except Greece, nor did you read it in any North American or Latin American publication or on television. That's the things that are going on out there that you don't know anything about.
Silver is Mr. Chapman, silver is a byproduction of gold and copper, is it not? How is there a silver shortage?
Because more silver is consumed than is produced every year, and the above-ground inventory for investment purposes is not large enough to meet demand. 70% of silver comes as a byproduct of mining of copper, lead, and zinc, and occasionally gold. It all depends on what kind of stratigraphy you have in the project, so to speak. So it varies widely.
I got a comment here. Mining in Mexico, the commodity silver Mexico is the world's second largest silver producer. Is that a stock that we should be looking at?
I don't know. What's it called?
He doesn't say. He just says commodity silver Mexico. The world's second largest.
I think there's a lot of good producing Mexican companies. You just have to know what to buy. And that's what we try to ferret out for people. And we don't recommend many stocks. In fact, those of you who want our stock recommendations, all you have to do is email. Or if you have a question, that address is Bob, B-O-B, at INTFORECASTER.com, Bob at intforecaster.com, and we'll send them to you. But there's been a move on for years, and to back the Mexican peso with silver. And I think a couple of years from now it could very well come to reality. And the reason why is I think that the other party, PRI, will win the next election at the presidential level. They already control both houses. And I think it's got a shot. The silver Libertad coin in Mexico is very popular. It's a beautiful coin. It's 1 ounce. And I think that could become reality. If it was to become reality, it would take a lot of silver off the market.
Uh-huh. We have a caller from area code 409. 409 area code, prefix 899. You're on the air. Venture Spleen with Mr. Bob Chapman.
Hello, Mr. Chapman. This is Lynn and Dale from Beaumont, Texas. Thank you very much for all your wonderful advice. We've made a fortune buying your stocks. Here is my comment. Recently, I was listening to the Jeff Rentz and D.V. Kidd interview, and they were speculating somewhat, but as you know, anyone that does a document in Photoshop or something, there's a box that you check if you don't want that document unlayered. Well, someone either inadvertently or purposely left that box unchecked so they could take it apart again. So what the speculation was that perhaps someone is actually after Obama trying to get him. And then they went on to say that Soros had recently said that perhaps Obama had not been such a good investment after all. So maybe he is wanting to take him down. And then further, they said that Trump has recently been trying to come up with a lot of money for some sort of condominiums or I don't know what it was. It was some kind of a deal, and he needed big money. Well, they went back and they looked at the records and come to find out his big backer was Soros. So could it be that in order for Trump to get that financing, could it be that he agreed to do this dirty deed for Soros to come out and, cause some excitement about Obama? Could it be that maybe that's why he was making these allegations? Because we know that Trump probably doesn't want to be president after all. But shortly after he accused Obama and all that, well, then the birth certificate was forthcoming and so forth. And now Trump's kind of dropped out of sight. So could it be that Soros is behind all this? Okay, I'm going to hang up now, and this is just speculation on my part, but this will be something fun for you to think about. Thank you. God bless you, Mr. Chapman.
Well, thank you. Debbie Kidd is a friend of mine. I've known her about 12 or 15 years. And when she had a radio show, when she needed somebody to sit in for her, I would. I guess I'm a soft touch for everybody. But she's a good reporter, an excellent reporter, and she does her homework. And that probably is true. I haven't seen the information yet. It must have come out today. And there's a good chance that her speculation is good. And that is that Trump might have been paid off with financing in order to go out and go after Obama. What the reasoning is behind the whole thing, I don't know. And they were forced to put out this certificate of live birth, which is virtually worthless. And, there's so many mistakes, it's unbelievable. But then again, who knows, there might have been another motive. And to say that Soros was involved, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever. That Trump did it for what he did it for, financing, I wouldn't put it past him. he thinks he's a billionaire, but he owes lots of money, and he's very highly leveraged. And so anyway, I'm glad you brought it up. I'll go look for it. And I'm glad Debbie came up with that. She's had some terrible problems with her husband, who's a military veteran. I think he was a major or a colonel. I can't remember which service he was in. But anyway, he's been very sick for a long time, multi-malady situation. So my heart goes out to her.
Anybody else want to call in? You got just enough time. Area code 347-308-8047. We'll put you right on up. Lana, you're still there. You want to be? I'm going to put you on hold. We'll put her on hold. We'll move back over here. Nobody else is calling in. I got several 409 area code. We got a lot of listeners today in Beaumont. Lana's been doing her due
diligence.
Well,
that's the center of the universe.
Yes, it's all that oil down there, you know? That's all that oil.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Big time. That's the major capital of the world. Quote, we're getting the word out. Mr. Chapman.
Well, that's what this is all about.
With the hyperinflation from Betty in California, hyperinflation and double dip in recession is heading to the United States, and the United States debt rating should be a C rating. Do you agree with that?
Without question. C equals triple B over at S&P, and or Moody's. I don't know which, but anyway, it's a triple A is 10, triple B is 4. If you want to rate them, 10 being highest. And in September of 1971, their rating should have been dropped. How far at that time, I don't know. But 15 days earlier, on August the 15th, they went off the gold standard. And when they did that, they destroyed the dollar. It's fallen 98% in value since then. It shows you how greedy these people in Wall Street are. They risked the entire American population, their economy, by being greedy.
Bank of DOJ. I had a couple of questions here about Japan. Bank of Japan warns the Japanese economic outlook is very severe. Mr. Chapman, do you think that the Japanese economy is about to collapse because of their situation?
No, but I do think they're going to have a very hard time. They have a tremendous debt, which is domestic. It's about 153% of GDP, which is really unrecoverable. Sooner or later, after 20 years of a depression, which they just had, and then now these terrible natural calamities, Japan is in serious trouble.
Two quick questions before we go off the air. Mr. Chapman, where's it at? Matthew, where's your question? Oh, here it is. This is from Larissa in Sochi, Russia. The silver market manipulation by the United States is being reported here in our local papers as well as in the Moscow Times. And the Russians in China are admitting that they are attacking the U.S. Over the silver manipulation by the U.S. government. What ramifications do you feel are on the horizon, Mr. Chapman?
And big ones. It's been about 15 years since the Russians fully realized and had all the facts about the manipulation of gold and silver. And as you've seen, in their foreign exchange, they continue to accumulate, particularly gold. And I am sure once there's a signal that this market has bottomed out for this retracement, correction if you may, they're going to be in there with China and Iran and maybe Mexico again, and Brazil and India, they'll be in there buying it up like mad. So Wall Street's got a few lessons to learn here in the next several weeks.
If you could, one quick question. What does Bob know about George Soros dumping his $700 million worth of gold?
Well, I understand he sold it, but it was 2 to 3 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
So evidently, he held that position in order to sell it to knock the market down deliberately because of all the propaganda that followed. So it wasn't him only selling and making a lot of money, but the propaganda that came with it to discourage other people for keeping their positions, and by doing that, making the two metals go down and allowing J.P. Morgan Chase and HSBC to cover their short positions in silver.
I heard that. Well, as we go off, you and Judy got a round of golf this weekend. We got more rain here.
Well, we get 2 of them coming up, and the weather's beautiful, and I'm happy I can still play and play well, and Judy's still looking for that first hole-in-one.
Yeah, Betty says we got some new golf clubs for ladies out there. Judy should look into getting her a new club so she can hit that hole-in-one. We got one of the girls here that's 41 years old that was 2 inches from a hole-in-one last Saturday, and she thought about Judy in South America and wished she was here.
Well, Judy has Callaways like I have, and they're the best clubs made in the world. And so I don't think we have to go too much further in clubs. She just needs a little bit more power, I think, and that's hard for somebody who's in their early 70s.
Amen. Well, with that said, Mr. Chapman, we'll see you next week. God bless. Tell Judy Happy Mother's Day for us.
I will. I certainly will.
Thank you,
and
sir.
Thank
God
you
bless.
all for listening.
And thank
Bye-bye.
you, sir, for all that you do. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bob Chapman, the internationalforecaster.com.